All right, we've got a lot to get to today, so let's get started. Like I said, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today for a spotlight of our fantastic partners at Collective Climb. My name is Mark Hauk, and I am a program officer at the Stoneleigh Foundation located here in Philadelphia. I manage the foundation's youth partnership program, which supports and, of course, partners with wonderful local nonprofits like our guests today to foster the voices and leadership of young people. Before we begin, we will have time for questions towards the end of our webinar. You can submit questions to our speakers by clicking on the Q&A button. It should be right at the bottom of your Zoom screen or phone, or sometimes it can be hidden in the More tab you might see down there. When you submit a question, please just make sure to include your name and organization so our speakers know who they are responding to. Thank you. Now, like I said, I'm excited to be joined this morning by Mckayla Warwick, Kwaku Owusu, and Noor Toraif, and as well with Gaia Smith, Damon Irvin, and Rumi Sheikh, who you will hear from a little later today. Without further ado, let me kick things off by asking you all to introduce yourselves, and then of course the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. Hello, my name is Mckayla Warwick. I am one of the co-founders of Collective Climb, as well as the executive director. And we've been here since the beginning. It's been a joy and an honor to do this.
My name is Kwaku Owusu. I'm another one of the co-founders and the finance director. We love working with youth, and it's my background is I did business school and I've somehow found myself working in this nonprofit facing youth. So I'm very excited to talk about our experience and be here to share more about our programming with y'all today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Noor Toraif. I'm an assistant professor at the Boston University School of Social Work, and I have been collaborating with Collective Climb on research and evaluation. Broadly, I'm interested in the experiences of young people who are impacted by multiple systems and alternatives to youth punishment, and I'm very happy to be here.
All right. So we are going to just jump in and get started with our presentation. So let me get these slides up for you. Pardon. Okay. So as I said earlier, it is truly an honor to be able to talk to you all about the work that we're doing at Collective Climb, especially because we are joined by an audience of sister organizations, other champions for justice, and people who are just genuinely curious to know about restorative justice. So we do hope that our time together today can ground you in what it is that we do, why we do it, how we do it, and who we are doing it for. So, by way of introduction, Collective Climb is a Black feminist organization that's focused on empowering youth and communities in Philadelphia through restorative justice. And for us, that is an approach to heal from interpersonal and systemic harm. We're also committed to transformative justice, which is the idea of building the structures we need to replace the systems that don't serve us. And in doing that, we are trying to realize Black joy, security, and freedom. And Kwaku kind of told you a little bit about going to business school, so I think it's fitting to tell you about our origins. So there are three co-founders of Collective Climb, myself, Kwaku, and Hung Tae Kim, who's still with us. And we found each other during our time as students at the University of Pennsylvania. Philly is not the original home for any of us, although we love it dearly and claim it if you all will claim us. But we felt welcomed by this city that allowed us to be history obsessed, creatively motivated, and community minded. And before we started doing this work, we really got to know the city through the eyes of the young people. We did after school programs where we went into West Philly and we got to know young people. We got to know their dreams. We got to know their plans for making money. And we also got to hear about the stories of their friends that they've lost through this justice system. And when we reached back into our own personal narratives, we realized a lot of things mirrored what we had gone through ourselves. So I feel like Collective Climb is definitively a product of 2020. It's the year that we were founded. It's the year that we started doing this work. And we were motivated by both the profound loss as well as the hope that was found in that moment. So we put on our COVID masks. We sat on a lot of front porches, like you can see in this picture here. we took the COVID mask off for the picture, just so y'all know. But and we just got to talk to our neighbors about what they thought about youth justice and transformative justice. And we found that 92% of our neighbors supported giving youth second chances, and 88% explicitly supported restorative justice. So we did create something that holds all of those dreams of the youth, all of those dreams of the neighbors, and we tried our best to handle it with care. And with that being said, we want to introduce you a little bit more to the spirit behind our work.
Thank you, Mckayla. Restorative practices are known as an indigenous practice, which means it comes from the indigenous people. We take inspiration from both indigenous Native Americans and indigenous African practices. So there's an important aspect of our work, which is somatic or relating to the body. So usually we'll do a whole body scan, some breathing, and a type of meditation before we start. But I just wanted to lead us in just a few simple opening breaths to keep us grounded. It might be a little awkward because of the Zoom, but we'll just do a little by little. So as we usually do, we ask our youth to put 2 feet on the ground, be in a position that's comfortable. And once you feel settled in your body, we're just going to take a deep breath in and breathe out. A deep breath in to breathe in and out. And a final deep inhale, taking in everything and breathing out. Thank you. Especially in these lines of work, it's easy to ignore the feelings of the body, but they're so important. And we'll talk more deeper into these reactions and how we hold this sacred in our work. But I'll pass it to Mckayla now to start talking about our programming.
Amazing. So yes, let's get into it. So we kind of divide our programming into 2 distinct buckets. The first half is the programming that is focused on repairing harm, and the second half is the work that wants to reknit the fabric of our community by bringing us closer together. So let's start with our reparative work. And that flagship program would be our Restorative Justice Diversion Program, which we will spend the bulk of today talking about. So that program began in 2021 and has supported 96 young people, as well as the survivors of harm, through a non-punitive and healing-focused offering. So we get referrals from the district attorney's office for what would have been charged as felony-level offenses if it continued on through the process. And over 6 months, we are focused on what does accountability mean? What supports do you need? And how do we move forward, not only as individuals, but collectively? And since starting that work, 90% of the young people who have completed the program have not been rearrested since we started. And we kind of use that to bridge deeper into diversion work. And as of last year, we started a pre-arrest diversion program where we receive referrals from the Juvenile Assessment Center for those lower level arrests, those retail thefts and fights that aren't quite assaults. And originally, we were hesitant to do that. We didn't want to contribute to net widening or expanding the reach of the system. But when we reconciled with the fact that we are truly a community-based initiative and young people come here, enjoy a Saturday together, unpack what happened, get decision-making tools to help them move forward, and then the incident is immediately expunged from their records, we were left with few cons as to why not expand in this way. So that's our reparative work. And now I'll kick it over to Kwaku to talk more about that more transformative work as well.
So this is our flagship program. We started the RCP in 2021, the Restorative Community Project, originally for all youth, but now it's a paid fellowship for girls, queer youth, and femmes to learn more about restorative practices, how to apply it into their own lives, and dream of what it might look like in the future. We decided to make a space specific for that group of youth because we find that a lot of programs in youth, particularly in response to violence, center young men, but we must account for the young women, the young queer youth, who oftentimes have to pick up the pieces after violence has occurred. Over 9 cohorts, which is wild to say now, we had 94% of our youth agree that Collective Climb is a safe space for them to be their fullest selves and without any fear of judgment. We are a Black feminist org, and what that means to us is that we've been inspired by many Black female authors such as Angela Davis and Audre Lorde. And I really want to highlight a quote from Saidiya Hartman, who inspired our most recent cohort. The wild idea that animates this book is that young Black women were radical thinkers who tirelessly imagined other ways to live and never failed to consider how the world might be otherwise. We believe that our Black girls are the future, and we understand that we must give them the utmost support so that they can actualize this without the pressure of feeling crushed. Our next program offering follows from the Restorative Community Project. Our Youth Advisory Board is a space for the graduates of both our diversion and RCP program to continue doing restorative practices work. As it stands currently, we let our youth support with planning events like political education and open mic night, or they can actually support with diversion cases as youth mentors. We pay our youth on the advisory board a stipend to continue their development and ensure that their work is recognized. I won't spend too much time here because we actually have 3 of our youth facilitators ready to talk about their experience later, and they can speak way better to it than I can describe right now. And finally, we have Collective Kickbacks, which is a name for our intergenerational workshop and event series for broader programming that we share with community of all ages. We have some events pictured on the slide. On the left, you can see an all ages hair braiding and collage workshop event. That's a fundraiser for rotating community causes. We had one last week and we raised about $300 for a community member and organizer we sadly lost. So they end up being a beautiful and reflective space we're able to build with each other. You can see in the middle one of our Friday night hangouts, and to the right, there was a workshop on restorative practices that some of our youth led at Swarthmore. I love restorative practices because they're a relational tool and we love to use them flexibly to meet the needs of our community and show up how we need to.
Absolutely. And just to kind of go into the why we do this work, so much of what is said about our young people is inherently negative. Young people in our communities, particularly Black and Brown communities, are often seen as insubordinate. They're seen as aggressive. They're seen as out of line. And this is language that we're borrowing from Alice Walker's definition of womanism, which asks us to actually shift the paradigm a bit. Instead of seeing those things as negative, why don't we celebrate that and see that as the very bravery that's needed to imagine beyond our existing systems? And instead, why don't we see those same things as outrageous, audacious, and courageous, as well as willful behavior? And if we return back to Saidiya Hartman, love this book down. Like, here it is. It's right here. But the quote that is here is, young folks were apt to be dangerous, right? The unsatisfied ambition, unrewarded merit, and the dismal prospects positioned them at war with the given. What was crime but the open rebellion of an individual against their social environment? And how could you not rebel against circumstances that make it impossible to live? So, unfortunately, viewing the youth as the problem still informs so much, still informs so much of what is dominant practice. And to be honest, as much as I love Philly, I find it shameful that our confinement rate for youth is higher than any other large US city. So per 10,000 youth, we admit 141 youth to detention or placement. And that's higher than major southern cities like San Antonio, Houston, or Dallas, but also the most populated cities in our country, Chicago, LA, and New York City. Also, nearly 60% of the youth that are in state juvenile institutions in Pennsylvania come from Philadelphia. And it goes without saying that Philly youth do not make up 60% of the kids in our entire state. So the impacts of detention, placement, and ongoing incarceration are largely negative and extensive, as you can see by this list to the right. When young people are returning home, they're having difficulties reestablishing relationships. They're having reduced employment and earning opportunities, housing insecurity, negative mental health impacts, substance use disorders, difficulties completing school, and also a higher likelihood of going right back into that system, meaning placement is not actually tending to harm, but it's worsening it. So we mentioned Angela Davis earlier as one of those Black feminist thinkers who deeply inspires us in our work. And I think it's pertinent to bring this quote from Our Prisons Obsolete. Many Black, Latino, and Native American communities now have a far greater chance of going to prison than getting a decent education. And that's just a sobering reality that many of us that work with young people see day in and day out. So we can get into more explicitly what it is that we are doing, what is our approach. And as Kwaku mentioned earlier, restorative justice is not something new. In fact, it's something that has existed even beyond the current punitive system that we have normalized and that we utilized. But on the left is how we presently do things. We are often asking what rule was broken, what law was broken, and who do we blame for that? And what is the punishment? As you can see, nothing asks about the social dynamics beyond that. Nothing asks about the needs, nor does anything ask about the repair that's required. And so on the right, we have the restorative approach. Instead, we are focused on what we can, if harm happened, we ask who was hurt, what their needs are as a result of that, and also how we can make it right. Both the people who were immediately impacted, as well as the broader community, because sometimes repair looks like creating the conditions and shifting them so that we have ways to care for ourselves. We have ways to prevent this from going any further. And I think that naturally takes us to transformative justice as well. It takes restorative justice a step further because it is an entirely community-led process that works outside of systems such as the DA's office or policing systems. And transformative justice at Collective Climb is led by our young people, and it looks like the following. We start with collectively unpacking our existing beliefs about harm and punishment. And then we start to imagine and practice new ways to address harm and moving forward so that we can then imagine how do we uproot these larger punitive systems that have never served us, right? That have only caused more harm so that we can rebuild for what is to come. And I think that's where the spirit of 2020 really comes in for us. We do believe reimagining and rebuilding is absolutely possible. And that's really our North Star. And I'll pass it back to Kwaku as well.
Thank you, Mckayla. I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the language that we use, and I must note that it's vital to our work, both in how we carry it out and also how we describe the work. In the criminal justice system, it's easy and encouraged to use typical punitive language like we just saw before. If we're offering a paradigm shift and trying to think of a more restorative world, we have to have the language to match. For example, instead of victim, we talk about survivors and use person harmed to center their humanity rather than what happened to them. Instead of offender, we use person who's caused harm, which is a mouthful, but it refuses to equate our participant to one of their worst moments. Ruptured relationships and making things right are used to describe justice and crime. And just keep in mind, as we continue to go through this presentation and use some language, there might be some stuff that's unfamiliar, so please ask questions. We'd love to explain. We're very deep in the restorative work, so sometimes this language comes very naturally to us, but we understand this is a little bit of a paradigm shift. To move on, we do this work for and by the people who are most impacted by the systems that Mckayla mentioned. So I wanted to share a little bit more about the demographics of the youth we work with. Our demographics reflect the challenging reality of the report that Mckayla shared with us earlier. 83% of our youth are Black, with Latinx making up 13%, with white and Middle Eastern North African making up the remaining 4%. Most of our youth are male, with a slight majority of 60%, and 38% are female, with a few gender nonconforming youth at about 2% of our youth. We're using some data from a 2023 report, but in 2019, 81% of youth incarcerated in Philadelphia were Black. While this data is a little bit behind from where we're at currently, it aligns with the observational truth that we've been seeing that Black and brown youth are more systemically likely to be targeted for incarceration. And even so, it's wilder when you think that Black youth represent less than half of the population of Philly's youth. That discrepancy is wild. Given these demographics, we've tailored our diversion program outcomes to meet the needs of this population. First, we're talking about improved well-being in a holistic sense. In addition to having their records cleared once our youth finish their program, they're able to recognize that they're more than just the harm that they've committed. We work with them to improve self-regulation, we help with social and self-advocacy skills, and we also leave them with tools to better adjust conflict moving forward in their lives. Racial justice is core to our organization, like we mentioned, coming out of 2020. And our intervention is specifically designed to help those most disproportionately affected by these systems of oppression. Our program is effective at stopping disruptions to the livelihoods of youth of color, and we overall improve their life trajectories after completing the program. We also hold the survivors of our program in a sacred light. We found that diversionary programming leads to a higher rate of satisfaction and fewer negative emotions lingering than the traditional criminal legal processes. By allowing survivors to lead our processes and actually addressing their needs and wants, we are able to approach a greater sense of closure than the criminal legal system could hope to try.
Absolutely. So I think with that, hopefully you have a firm understanding of what restorative justice is. And now I want to tell you a little bit about how it looks internal to Collective Climb. So on average, Collective Climb's restorative justice diversion process is about 4 to 6 months long. So young people who otherwise would have been charged with a felony level offense, who would then be at risk for detention or placement, get referred to us by the district attorney's office at the pre-charge or pre-petition level. So that means no charges or formal court proceedings have happened at this stage. And we also receive the contact information for the consenting survivors. And I want to say it is very key that we're talking about consenting survivors, because sometimes people want to see young people go through a diversion process, but don't necessarily want to be a part of it. And we'll talk about how we've made space for that as well. But we begin then at the stage of the opening meeting with the youth and the survivor. So when both parties have consented, we sit down and we build rapport and trust between our restorative justice facilitator and the folks who will be engaging in the process. And this happens separately. And this allows us to ask the restorative questions, which we'll review a little bit in a second, and also uncover what needs have been unmet and what repair really looks like to this particular situation. And in the instances where survivors don't want to be a part of the process, we still hold this same meeting, asking the same questions with the youth and their caregivers as well, because we still want them to know on the other side of this, someone else was still impacted. And that allows us to move into our second phase, which is the engaging of community supports. So anything that comes out of that opening meeting where we learn about different needs that need to be tended to immediately, we're on it. And that has looked like emergency payments for participants and survivors. That's looked like referrals to therapy programs, as well as group programs, as well as, ensuring that they're connected to community supports and they have spaces in their own neighborhood where they can really have pro-social supports that are close by to them. And once we've covered the stopgap and met basic needs, we then go into our weekly meeting schedule. So this is the crux of our intervention. Youth, we meet with them every single week. That would be a facilitator and a young person meeting one-on-one. And in those meetings, they're exploring their personal values. They're exploring how they have historically responded to conflict. They're thinking about their life goals while also learning the different tools that are needed to take accountability for the harm that they've caused, and feel really prepared for when we get to that last step, which I'll talk about in just a second. And this is usually 16 to 20 weeks, so that 4 to 6 month range of doing those meetings. And here I want to name survivors have more flexibility. We've had survivors who say, oh, I'm meeting every week too. And we have a full curriculum for them. And we also have had survivors who say, like, I only want to meet 1 or 2 times between now and the circle. And we trust that guidance from them. But as I have mentioned before, this is a youth-led initiative to the degree that it's possible, and participant feedback has kind of been the undercurrent through it all. And so while we used to only have those solo sessions, young people started asking for a communal space where they could talk about what they're going through alongside their peers. And so we have developed these weekly group meetings that are gender-based affinity groups. And we'll soon pause them for a little bit to relaunch them so that they'll be aligned with dialectical behavioral therapy approaches, so that young people can explore mental health, mindfulness, as well as relationships and power dynamics in a way that really does tend to trauma in a gold star kind of way. And they're the auxiliary things too, as shown by these cute little purple circles. Sometimes young people really want to lean more into community events and political education workshops that we do, and we celebrate that. Sometimes they have to earn restitution, and we support them in finding community projects that they can do to earn back that restitution, so it does not have to come out of the pockets of the families of the young people that we work with. So once this phase is complete, these are all concurrent things, we move into the healing circle. And that is where we revisit with both parties together what it is that has happened, all the reflection work that has happened since, and then we also practice close listening and what does it mean to come to a shared understanding. And we do also discuss if continued accountability must be taken for this experience to actually be a meaningful display of repair. And when survivors have not consented to being a part of the process, we pivot. And that means we sometimes have a family circle. Sometimes we have an affirmation circle with their peers, community members, and mentors. And other times we've utilized surrogate survivors who have gone through similar harm to be able to talk about what that experience was like for them so the young person really understands. Once all of this has happened, and I know I've said a mouthful, we get to that place where we can close out the young person's case. And that means at that point, there is a 6-month waiting period from when their record will be expunged, meaning it will not appear anywhere. And to support them through that transition, we continue to check in. We continue to invite them to group meetings and political education and hangout workshops that we do here. Or even invite them to join our youth advisory board to be co-facilitators in other young people's processes. And I'm just going to briefly say, like, what does it require for a young person to join this program? And I'll admit we don't have a lot of rules. Instead, we set agreements and we collaboratively imagine norms for engagement with the young people determining the norms that they want to agree to. But our agreements are here on the left. We're asking young people to think about what happened. We're asking them to be open to meeting with the survivor. We're asking them to trust that we're going to do our best to support them and that they must also be willing to do the best that they can to support themselves and the person that they've harmed. And we're also asking them to do their best to make purposeful decisions that align with the values that they'll be discussing while they're in the program. And we have them look at what we mean by the word accountability so that we're all working from a shared standpoint. So this is a quote from a disability justice activist, Mia Mingus, who says that true accountability is not only apologizing, understanding the impact of your actions that they've caused on yourself and others, making amends or reparations to the harmed parties, but most importantly, true accountability is changing your behavior so that the harm, violence, abuse does not occur again. And when we ask young people, do you agree to engage in this process? There may be some hesitancy, there may be some fear, but when we tell them, we'll meet you where you are, they always say yes.
And I'll hop in right now to talk about some of the restorative questions that we use when we're working with both the youth who've caused harm and also the harmed parties. For those with a social work background, they might seem similar to motivational interviewing. We've blended some aspects of that line of questioning with restorative practices to come up with the questions that we use. So as we go through some of these questions, you can see we never ask, why did you do this? Or assign blame to either party. It's questions like, what happened? What were you thinking about this time? What have you thought since the incident? What do you think has been affected by your actions? How are they affected? This is deliberate, as we want our responsible youth to come up with on their own terms about how they committed the harm and how they can come to accountability. And our harm party's experience is also their own to decide when we want to ask them these questions. They are also informed by what each individual feels about the greater context in their life, like what's going on with their family, what's going on with school, what's going on with any other important conditions or individuals who mean something to them. And then we also finally ask them what it might look like to move forward. Answers to these questions are fluid. It might depend on the day or the session. Sometimes we might get silence with the youth on one day. Other days it might be gushing about everything. But we hold that in mind and allow, and part of what's important about restorative practices is we make space for that transformation to occur gradually. It's never linear.
100%. And I actually want to provide just a quick example. So I am not going to share any details about who the person is behind this quote, but this is a glimpse into an accountability letter that has happened. And the unique instance here was on both sides, both people were harmed, as well as people who were responsible parties who, who had been arrested for the harm that has happened, and they both got to be a part of this process. So I'll just read it a little bit. The lasting impacts of this incident have been that it taught me a lesson, not to react on material things and things that aren't going to last a lifetime. It helped me learn how to channel my anger a little bit. And then I'll skip a bit. The hardest part of all of this was sitting in that cell, being handcuffed, ignored, freezing. And later on, they say, I really need to ask you, why did you steal my car? I remember you said because it was running. Do you look at this as a lesson learned? Would you steal another car if it was just running? How do you feel about things moving forward? And lastly, I really need to say to you that I don't have anything negative to say. I feel like I did enough. I hope that you can leave this whole situation in the past. And if you don't have a mentor or positive role model, I wouldn't mind being someone who could check in on you. And I think this is a compelling portrait for how people who experienced a situation on opposite vantage points went through weeks and weeks of reflecting and weeks of kind of thinking about how they want to show up as community members and how they want to uphold their own values, that they were able to come together at the end, read this letter in a circle, talk about it, and hug and exchange phone numbers and say, you know what, I'll take you up on that offer. I actually do need a mentor. And it doesn't always end that way, right? Sometimes it's, hey, appreciate it. I'm good. No, don't ever do this again. But that actually is powerful too, because it's giving the person the opportunity to say what it is that they need out of a process. And lastly, I'll kind of end with what people have said about being a part of this experience. We've had young people say, I didn't think that I would like coming to this program, but every week I look forward to our sessions. What I learn guides me through the week. We've also had young people say this is the first place that they've had room to release all that they've been holding in, as well as survivors. Sometimes they're youth, just like, the young people in our program, and other times they're adults. But they've said, thank you for giving me a platform to say I forgive you. And they've also said things like, for the first time, I felt supported instead of judged. Collective Climb didn't change my behavior. It changed the way I see that my future could be. It, helped. It could really help other teens who feel lost or misunderstood, like I did as well. And just very quickly, I'll just say we have about 30 hours of one-on-one programming, up to 30 hours of group-based programming, up to 15 hours of auxiliary referrals that we're providing young people. And again, this is a repeat. 90% of the young people who have gone through the program have not been rearrested since. And 100% of the young people who started the program did, in fact, complete. We don't send cases back. We're willing to work with young people where they are. And we wish that we had supported more survivors directly, but we do acknowledge that one of the major hurdles we face in restorative justice is that narrative change, that people actually, can see that the work that we're doing can be powerful and that something is possible beyond our traditional way of dealing with harm through the justice system. So I am now going to pass over to Dr. Noor, who has just been an incredible support and helping us who've been down on the ground doing the work really start to think about, like, how are we committing this work and adding it to the literature? And how are we telling a story that extends beyond recidivism, but instead allows us to lean into the humanity of what really is happening at this time?
Thanks so much, Mckayla. So as Mckayla and Kwaku both shared, you can see that Collective Climb is doing very careful, very intentional, very time-consuming programming that is relational. And so we have also been collaborating on a research agenda that is examining this restorative justice-based diversion work, both drawing from and responding to the current evidence base on restorative justice-based diversion. So the existing literature tends to focus on recidivism and preventing people from recontact with the criminal legal system. And indeed, we see that restorative justice programming in general and diversion-based programming also is associated with small to moderate reductions in recidivism. And at the same time, there has been a parallel body of work that has been documenting impacts less frequently centered that are particularly around youth long-term well-being that Mckayla and Kwaku both talked about. So some of the evidence demonstrates that restorative justice-based programming, including diversion, is associated with increases in young people's self-efficacy, their ability to resolve conflict, their conflict resolution skills, and also is associated with stronger social connections. There's also some evidence that restorative justice processes improve the experiences of those who were harmed, the survivors, particularly in terms of their satisfaction and their perceived fairness of the process compared to the traditional criminal legal system. But in this body of work, there are two key limitations. One is that the long-term impacts of restorative justice programming continue to be understudied. Most of these evaluations are short-term and do not track changes over time. And we still see that this emphasis on well-being of the young people, post-system contact, post-diversion, tends to be secondary, and recidivism continues to be sort of centered as the primary indicator of success. So the dominant question remains relatively narrow on whether reoffending is reduced, and not on how can this intervention of relational restorative justice not only keep young people away from the criminal legal system, but also help them rebuild and sustain their well-being over time. Okay, so our research agenda is really oriented towards shifting this framing in line with collective climb's programming. So in the current phase of research and evaluation, we are conducting retrospective interviews with all collective climb participants to date. And our goal here is to identify well-being related outcomes that are really grounded in participants' experiences in order to expand our definition of what success looks like post-restorative justice and diversion programming. And in the next phase, we are conducting one of the few, or potentially the first, longitudinal prospective mixed method study over a two-year period that is looking at young people's outcomes well after they have completed the restorative justice-based diversion process. We're tracking well-being outcomes at the individual level, so that is mental health, self-efficacy, and how young people are thinking about their futures long-term. We're tracking outcomes at the family level, including family support and functioning, to reflect some of the family level programming that Collective Climb does, and then also at the community level, so the extent to which young people are experiencing belonging and connection within their communities. And in doing this work, we are going to compare different approaches, again, mirroring the expansion in transformative justice programming. We're going to look at the impact of restorative justice diversion alone and restorative justice combined with transformative justice programming, which also includes a youth participatory action research component. And we believe in this work that the YPAR component is both a method and an intervention. So the young people will be engaged in co-producing knowledge about belonging, mutual accountability, and the broader conditions that shape their lives. And we are really intentional and excited about the addition of the transformative justice programming to shift both the programmatic and research focus, not just to the young people's experiences, but also to the broader conditions that structure young people's well-being over time.
Awesome. So we have kind of had a bit of a shift in where we are situated, but we are excited to be joined. Let me turn off my screen share. Sorry. So we're excited to be joined by Damon, Gaia, and Rumi. As Kwaku mentioned earlier, are three young people who have completed our Restorative Community Project, gone on to be on our Youth Advisory Board, and have really shaped this work in so many ways that are beyond our wildest imaginations. So we want to give you all the experience of kind of seeing what a restorative circle looks like. So we're in a semicircle, which we can do with a camera, but our goal here is to get to know them and hear about this work in their own words. And I'm going to use this thing here called a talking piece, which is going to just flow from one person to the other as they talk about their experiences. So my first question is, if you can state your name for the record, and if you can think back to who you were when you joined Collective Climb's Restorative Community Project and who you are now. All right. And I'm gonna just make sure I'm not.
My name is Damon Irvin. I was introduced to Collective Climb around 2022. I think I was introduced to them through some type of program that they were doing at the time. And around that time, I really wasn't in the best mind space or like headspace. I came to their space. I started doing their program. I was doing their program for about a month or two, and I really enjoyed it. And I guess, I felt like I was able to express myself more in that space because they're very welcoming and comforting. And the person I am now, because of them, is a leader. It's a lot of people that lean on me, and a lot of people that look up to me, and a lot of things that I wasn't ready for, like the leadership role. They actually helped me get better at it. Like, I don't think I'll be able, like, because of them, I'm getting a promotion at my job because of the leadership skills that they have taught me. And everything that I've done with Collective Climb and for Collective Climb has benefited me in some type of way.
Oh, hello. My name is Gaia. I got involved with Collective Climb through the Restorative Community Project back in 2024. And I feel like I was a completely different person in 2024. I was 17 with a belly full of passion and just not knowing where to put it, what it looks like. Like I was just scrolling on Instagram and I saw the restorative community project and I was like, oh, okay, this looks up in my alley. Like maybe this is something that I can do to shape how I feel. And I feel like I did not expect to get I like transformed the way that I did after restorative community projects. Like it really shaped the way that I saw my passion moving in the world. It shaped the way that I saw a space for my creativity to flow and how that can help my community. Like I always felt like poetry, art was something to be done in the background, like that's my hobby or that's just something that I'm into, but it showed me of how I can turn it into a healing form and how to really use it into the community. And I feel like now, actually just last night, I was in a meeting and I'm like figureheading a campaign right now. And like I typed up our agenda and everything. And like I was looking at after everything after, and I was like, I would not be doing this stuff like if it was not for Collective Climb. Like, and I was just thinking about it, like, oh my God, Mckayla and Kwaku would be so proud of me right now. But it's just transformed the way that I show up as a professional, that I show up as a person, and I show up in my own personal life. It's amazing.
My name is Rumi. I joined RCP in 2022, same time as Dame. And yeah, I was 14 and I was definitely a very different person before I joined Collective Climb. Similar to Dame, during that time period, like ages like 13 or 14, like I didn't really like I had just started high school, but like there was like nothing that I was really doing outside of like hanging out with my friends and going to school and like maybe not in the best headspace either. And I was like looking a lot my school would email us like opportunities like every weekend of different stuff that you can do in Philadelphia. And similar to a lot of my friends wanted to leave Philadelphia and they didn't like Philadelphia. They were like, this is like a city's like full of like negativity and there's like especially during that year like 2021 it was a pretty rough year for the city. So a lot of people were like, yeah, I want to leave, and I was like similar to them. So like between like my parents and me, we were trying to find like something for me to like do. And I found the restorative community project on my school's email and I joined. And I feel like RCP is what kind of like led me to like realize that there's like a lot more to Philadelphia. There's just a lot more to like the city to do. And it kind of opened my eyes, and that's what kind of made me realize that like this is what Collective Climb is here to give. So that's when I learned about the diversion program that me and Dame are both in now after we finished RCP, which is where we help the youth the program that they were talking about earlier. But it was like that program that made me realize that, okay, these are all kids who have been in my shoes who don't have much to see in the city, and then we offer them like there's more in the city. We offer them like a structure and a guide, and that kind of helps shape me into someone who can also be a guide and offer a structure. So before Collective Climb, like there was like no guide, like no structure. But after Collective Climb, it kind of provided me like a way to just express myself and also be able to help other people express themselves.
Thanks. And Kwaku and I may bounce back and forth between asking some questions, but you see the shirts. Gaia made hers look real cute. But I actually want to ask a question about that. We use that expression of Black noise a lot, and I want to ask if you can say something about Black noise.
I mean, I guess Black noise to me is being proud in who I am and everything that I'm doing, and not being, I guess, nervous to show the world and be like judged.
I feel like Black noise is more of something that you embody rather than a sound. I feel like it's a form of resistance or a commitment to be the change that you want to see in the world, to tear down what you don't think is supposed to be there, but only doing that with something to replace what you tore down with.
I was gonna say like a similar thing. Like I think it's a form of resistance, and like the shirts say, like on the back of them it says like to reject any forms of white supremacy. So I think similar to what Gaia said, that it's a form of resistance to tear down any structures of like social or racial hierarchy around you, or to tear down hegemonical systems that are oppressive in any way, and not just tearing them down, but again, like Gaia said, like replacing it with something more productive, replacing it within like the community which the Black noise is being embodied in or created in.
So I wanted to ask, since y'all have at least 2 years of leadership experience each at Collective Climb, you've been through a lot of our programming, especially y'all two who've been with us since 2022. So I was curious, what's the most impactful experience you've had or curated at Collective Climb?
One of the most impactful experiences I've had is probably with a tripled youth that come to the program. I ended up building a bond with him, and now he is a part of our team. He isn't currently here right now, but during, I think that was our 2023 year. During our 2023 year, we had somebody come in. His name was Irvin. At the time, he was a wild one. He was. I'm being honest. He was a little wild. Over time, hanging out with him outside of the program and hanging out with him inside of the program, I actually got to pick his mind and actually talk to him and really see what was going on. And we started to build a connection. And now he's somebody that I can lean on, and I'm somebody that he can lean on when it seems like the world is crashing down.
I feel like I have two different experiences for two different reasons. The first one was in 2024 during RCP. I'm a poet, and at the time I didn't know that I could write just off of whim. Like, hey, I'm gonna pick up something, look at this thing and write. It was just always from an overwhelm of emotions or like a random inspiration in a random place, but I just never knew I could make it flow. And like we had been doing it the whole time, like it was kind of a part of our daily process. But I remember your cousin came in and she had us look at this apple and write poems about this apple. And here I was like ripe skin, dented, and like it was just the way that I was able to transform my community, my creativity in that way, and just observe what was in the community. It transformed the way that I viewed myself as a creative in the way that I can create. And then also later down the line in Collective Climb, after being here for a while, I was kind of looking around, and it was it was during our internship here, and I was looking around, and I was like, okay, so what can I do? And like we were talking about events and stuff, I was like, okay, so open mic, we're gonna have one. Let's have an open mic. And then they were like, okay. And I was like, okay. they were like, okay. So we threw an open mic and I was able to host it. And like now it's become a consistent thing. And being able to curate that, to hold it, like I look at a poem as if it's my child, like something that I've created and now it is out in the world. It was in my brain and it is a thing. Being able to bring my ideas to life at Collective Climb is just, I love it.
So for me, well, I have two different answers for impact and like that I've had and impact that I've made. But for the first one, impact that I've had, I remember like at ICP, like we would always see Mckayla and Kwaku going like somewhere like during ICP, like, hey, we have to take care of this diversion program stuff and this diversion program stuff. So I was always really interested. And I was like, damn, like that seems so fun. Like that seems way more like in depth and interesting. Like everything that we learn in ICP is going to be used there. So I got really interested in that like really quick. So we had two options in our RCP. Either we joined the art program or the diversion program. And me and Damien both immediately chose the diversion program. But the impacts that I've had at the diversion program were definitely like shaped like I would say like my whole like trajectory like of life because I went when I went to university like because of the diversion program I was like okay I want to go in for law like that's what I know. So the impact that I've had at the diversion program, the friends that I've made, and the people that I've spoken to and actually spoken to like try and help, like these are like relationships that I still have to this day. The impacts that had on me were like I can't even like say into words because I've been around for three. Yeah, I've been around for three sessions of the diversion program. So technically three, but yeah. So I've seen like a lot of different like we worked in like different places before we had this space. We worked in like different areas. And it was always something new and a new group of people, and it was very like eye opening to see like how much impact like we had as youth on these other people who were also youth. Like it was we were able to connect with them on a level that maybe some adults or some other programs may not have. And the impact that I think that I've made at Collective Climb is similar to what Guy was saying. I was involved with like some like political education organizing back when I was in the University of Pittsburgh before I transferred here to Temple. And then when I transferred to Temple, I was like, okay, I want to do the same thing here, but like I didn't really feel like starting fully from scratch and making my connections like all over again, like I had at University of Pittsburgh. I'm from Philadelphia, so I knew I can come to Collective Climate and see like how they would think if I started a political education like seminar here. And I was like, maybe they might be skeptical or anything, but they were immediately like, nope, yeah, like yeah, we can do that. So that is something that I think I'm very like I'm very happy and very grateful that they let me use their space and help me create these education seminars. So so far we've had one, and the next one is going to be next week, and that really allows me to express myself and show like all like the knowledge that I'm learning. And it's not just like a lecture, like the education seminars we do is a circle oriented, so everyone engages. So not only do I try to teach what I know, but I also am able to learn from people's other perspectives. And these political education seminars are specifically directed towards youth in diversion because a lot of them are like my peers and my friends, so I'm able to share my knowledge amongst people my age, and I think that's something very important and impactful.
Awesome. And can I just give Rumi and Dame a little bit more credit? Actually, and Gaia, you too, but I just want to say something. You said earlier you had the option to join either like helping to create events or diversion. That's not actually true.
Oh.
It was creating events, and you and Dame came up to me and said, what if we don't want to do that? What if we want to help in the diversion program? So we were like, oh, okay, wait, we gotta think on that. Okay, sure. You know what? Let's make it happen. So y'all actually are the reason that possibility even exists. But just wanted to say that. All right. So we are all right on time. So we've got a couple more questions. The next one we want to ask is, and maybe you've said it already, so if you feel like you've already spoken to it, you can pass the talking piece. But the question is, how have you grown as a leader through Collective Climb? And we'll start with Gaia and then pass it back to Dame when he comes back.
Okay, so Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, first for me, I feel like it started to develop outside of collective climate first. Like at first, I really was taking what I was learning in collective climate and applying that to my different roles because I'm in a bunch of youth advisory boards and revolution coalitions. So in those different places, I started taking more leadership. Like I ended up becoming a chair in another coalition and just bringing about different things that we could do. But I feel like it really started to shape here as an intern. Me realizing like, okay, I can do open mic here. And then I bought Mindfulness Mondays here. So I just kind of started building up on community events and targeting different things in the community and just having a safe, open, free space where people can come and get fed, regardless of who you are, what you look like, or where you come from. And then I think furthermore, it's just really given me the confidence that I can get it done. You know, like I said yesterday, I'm figureheading a campaign and I was able to map out a whole campaign in like an hour and 10 minutes. And I felt really confident in it. It felt really motivating. And I feel like Collective Climb has moved me into a better leader, has given me the confidence to lead with confidence and also the tools that I need to lead. Like, truthfully, I feel like I know what I need to do. I know how to build an agenda, I know how to maintain community relationships. I can go out and table for any organization if I needed to. Like, I feel like you've turned me into an overall well-rounded practitioner. And I feel like no matter where I am, I'm able to adjust and adapt because of what I've learned here.
For me, similar to like what I said in the for the last question, I think that like it's given me a lot of confidence to be able to do things and like talk to new people as well. Because a lot of the diversion program has just been introduced to new people. Okay, now we have to engage with them as much as possible. So just off of that factor alone, I feel like I've gained a lot more confidence in speaking to people. And again, also like joining other organizations in Philadelphia and um like other coalitions or like building projects like Collective Climb has helped me in that regard like a lot. I'm able to like whenever I have to engage in project building or help anyone with project building, I know how to do it more clearly, and that's because of experience at Collective Climb. Because oftentimes, well, like almost like every event that we've had since I've been here, like every major event, like we all get in a room and we plan it. And all the political education seminars that we've had, I hop on a Zoom call with whoever is helping me at the time, and we sit down and we plan it. We write down we write down norms and everything, and it provides a structure to provide a structure. So just off that factor alone, the confidence that has been built through Collective Climb, I feel like that has made me a much better youth leader.
You fill me in on the question.
Of course. So how have you grown as a youth leader at Collective Climb?
How have I grown up? I've grown as a youth leader in Collective Climb. I've grown a lot, honestly. In the beginning, I did have to learn how to get out of my comfort zone because I really wasn't used to being the one to like people have to listen to, or people are listening to what I'm telling them and I'm trying to guide people. At first I really wasn't used to that type of role in the I'll say first year or two. And over time I started to get more comfortable in it. And because I seen how comfortable people were with me and how comfortable people were with trusting me. And it showed me that if I continue to do this work, it could take me way more places. Like anytime I mention this job, I always say this is the job that I will always have so I can open as many doors as I can. Because there is no limit to the people I may meet while working here, and there is no limit to the things I may do while I'm working here. And I feel like that's some of the stuff that's helped me.
Thank you, Damon. Beautiful answer. I want to go ahead to another question because I think it sort of fits with what we're talking about, what you just said. I think at Collective Climb, we call this a space of potential in a lot of ways, potential for our youth, potential for our community, and potential for how we see the world as we want to build it. So my question to y'all is, how do you view the world differently after being in Collective Climb programming?
Um, I mean, I see the world differently now as I see it's always more than one way to fix a problem, and you'll be surprised how many problems are able to be fixed in the community and in the world on a day-to-day basis. And with Collective Climb, it shows you that you don't always gotta take the harsh route, or you always don't gotta take the I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna have to route, because there's always, I guess, a brighter side or a less harsher side to the way things may go in the world. And it also showed me I could bring people together even when they are divided, or even when things may not be going the best with each other.
Before Collective Climb, I feel like I was really confused. Like I understood what was going on, but I was confused about how I could do anything about it, or what was to be done, or what was my place in the community. And I think that like after Collective Climb, it really helped me digest the fact that like you're not the only one somewhere trying to navigate this confusion, or trying to do or have their part in what this confusion is. And then it helped me really see the hope in like tomorrow. Like there are minds that are working to make sure that people have something, and there are spaces that you can enter into with other people who are looking and have the same vision, mission, or goal as you, some way, somehow, to build a brighter space for our community. And I think that like that's really shaped the way that I see people. Like I used to feel like, yo, everybody's so bad. People are messed up. Like these people are monsters and da 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 da. And now I just think on the brighter side, like I've really turned into an optimistic, like to the point where the people that I don't agree with, I still think about their childhood, bringing like what they went through to shape who they are today, you know? And like it's helped me see like everybody's going through their own struggle. Like there's not any person on this earth that hasn't been traumatized and that isn't going through their own type of whatever it is, even the crazy parasite class. But it gets to a certain point where it's like, wow, everything is okay. This is not flowers and sunshines, but I can see a rainbow. And like we are truly in a community. And even if I don't agree with you, it's not about me disagreeing with you, but it's about us figuring out how can we fit our puzzle pieces of ideas together. Like it doesn't, we don't have to be on the same page. Like, how do we fit that in the same book though?
For my view after Collective Climb on the world, I would say that, well, for one, it allowed me to see, like already answered similarly, but it allowed me to see like the many different ways to solve issues and solve problems, even like amongst my own friends. Like if I see something like if we get in a fight or anything, like verbally, or it doesn't matter. There's always like I do think of like stuff that we've learned in RCP. I'm like, okay, like maybe I should remember like what did we learn at RCP? Like how would that help, and how can we mitigate the situations? So definitely, like I feel like it's just given me more empathy being at Collective Climb, and that's not just from the stuff that we've learned here, but also from the different people we meet. Oftentimes, like there's one moment I remember, we had someone who was here for diversion group, and me and one of the facilitators, we had to meet the parents of the kid, and we had to meet the parents and him, and we had to talk about everything. And I remember like seeing the parents, and like what I'm trying to say is it gives you a lot of empathy, and it allows you to humanize like a full group of people my age that are often dehumanized in media, or dehumanized throughout like you can walk around, you can look at social media, you'll always find people dehumanizing the people that Collective Climb is often working hard to basically humanize them. So that's what I would say Collective Climb has given me, that allows me to like fight off like any sort of discrimination, and just it gives me overall more empathy. So like I was saying, like I was with that kid's parents, and I was able to talk to his like father and his mom, and that really, and they kept saying to me like, wow, like we hope like our son is like helping people like you one day. And I was like, okay, like that was really nice to hear. So it's stuff like that that just allows you to get more empathy. So I think that's like the main thing that changed my view from the client.
Appreciate you. All right, we've reached that place of our last question before we move into Q&A. And that question is basically boomeranging back to y'all, this intention of being a youth-led organization. What is your dream for Collective Climb?
Um,
I should take notes.
I mean, I know I've said this before in the past. One of my dreams for Collective Climb is for us to have different branches inside of the city. Instead of just having one space downtown that the kids always have to come to, we can have a space in West Philadelphia where kids that don't feel comfortable coming down here can just go there. We can have one in South Philadelphia where kids don't feel comfortable coming down here can go there and start to expand, not even just staying in Philly, because and imagine us having collective climbs in all 50 states. For real. You'd be surprised how big organizations could get. Because we're still only a few years in.
Yeah.
Imagine 10 years from now, we could have a lot of stuff done.
I concur. Because like for me personally, I see Collective Climb, we put it on the map. Like this is a global, worldwide thing. Like if it's not physically, globally, it'll be a global name, I feel. And just like I see it getting to the point, and I want to help it get to the point of like, you know how in Philadelphia we have PHNC, like that is a nonprofit that owns like a bunch of and is in a bunch of different places, has its hands in a bunch of different pots. And I feel like I see Collective Climb kind of reaching that point, like, you know, connecting with other missions that are doing the same type of thing, just in different areas, and being able to build this larger network for us to have like a large building, a very large building, to where like maybe we could have like, because Collective Crime don't even realize the way that they kind of really breed people like into this type of person. Like, and I feel like they are on a track to like we could have a building, and while Collective Climb has its own programming, like they can have other people like youth starting up their own nonprofits or businesses in the same building, or we can be like, just like Dane said, we can have stuff all over the city. So where we have like centers, hot spots where you're able to come, because outside of that, like this is a resource spot, you know, like we can have a place in West Philly that's strictly for therapy, or we could have a drop down here where we could have like a community fridge or something. I just see us branching out into a community resource that continues to branch out into a larger network.
I also agree with the ideas of the expansion of Collective Climb. And specifically, like I remember one instance when I was talking to Mckayla, and she was like, "I want to start like programs for reading and like math and all of that." So I was thinking like, okay, like that's gonna be something else added to like the plate of Collective Climb. So I would keep it simple and say like my dream for Collective Climb is like everything that we want to be able to achieve will be achieved like with ease. So like if we see like, oh, there's like an issue with people are having issues at school, so we're able to provide an easy like a easy resource for everyone to come here and be able to get better at school. Or if people are having issues with jobs, and we can have more job workshops, and there can just be resources that are able to supply the wants and needs for Collective Climb with ease.
All right. So I'm just going to say thank y'all so much for always reminding us to dream bigger, to always imagine what can come next. I want to know, like, it's not us that brings it all together. It's actually us collectively imagining it. So y'all see, we're in great hands, whatever our future may be. It may not be me and Kwaku that make it go to all 50 states, but it might be you, you know? So keeping that in mind. But with that being said, we want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us today, and we'll look at the questions that you all have for us now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. Collective climb in all 50 states, I think, is a real admirable goal. A lot more to say, but we can get to that later. We have a lot of really wonderful questions today. We're going to try to get to as many of those as possible, given the time that we have. But that is to say, to not scare you away, if you still have a question or comment you would like to submit, please go ahead and do so. Even if we aren't able to get to it today, we'll make sure that we share everything that we do have with our speakers after the event. So to get started, I'm just going to get right into it. Our first question comes from Charlotte Kramer with the Restorative Justice Project of Maine. And it's directed towards the youth, but anybody is welcome to answer it. Would love to know your experience going through the process and specifically what inspired you to stay involved beyond that initial involvement. Charlotte says she's worked with several young people who have gone through the diversion process, the restorative process at Maine. And while they appreciate the process, they really just want to move on and put everything behind them after they complete the process. So would love some thoughts on what they could be offering to help young people feel more invested and to engage in the work long term rather than just short term.
I can start. Okay,
Yeah.
we can start. Well, one main thing that I think would be helpful is, like Dane mentioned earlier, like we met like a friend on the like in one of the diversion programs named Irvin, and then he ended up joining us in like the youth facilitation. I think the best way to do it is, I don't know if in Maine you have youth, like also people like youth people who are helping, young people who are helping. In the diversion program, but I think that's the best strategy, having people that they can connect with their age who are on like kind of like the other side. But then there's having young people who are working with you, like makes it so there's no sides, like everyone is like one, and then that's how like friendships are made. Because a lot of people that have wanted that have come to diversion program, like we're still friends. Like a lot of them, like me, Damon Irvin, there's like a lot more. There's like a big group that we're all still connected, and that's because of like friendships that we're able to create because of age.
Yeah, I would definitely feel that vibe. Like, what made me say is that it felt like a family. Like Kwaku and Mckayla felt like my older siblings, and in a space like that, I respect deeply because I would never try it with them. But it felt like a family. You know, they really opened up and welcomed the space. But I do have to say, my mind was already in a space to be like primed and prepped. So I was already like wanting to be involved in something, and I think that that plays a part of it, because like, you know, like you see us three here, there's a couple more students who are more like active in collective climate, actually curating things, but collective climate has had like hundreds of students out and through these doors, and you know, not everyone stays, but the people who are ready for like that type of leadership or to ready to be put in a place, they will stay or they will find. But really, that family feel. And then people being able to know up front, like, you can create in this space. You can do this. You can do that. Like after RCP, we were told that we would be reached back out to. Like you have the youth advisory board right after this. So even though our program is even though our program is ending, we're still here for you. And then they still were like, they reached back out, made sure that we came back out. And then it was like, I knew that we could throw events, but I didn't know how real or serious that was. I didn't know how long you had to be around. And then it just took a while of like being here for me to get that courage to ask. And then when the answer was yes, it was like, yes. But they continuously reached out. You know, they opened up their doors for opportunities. It really felt like a family. And then also, as a creative, it was great breeding grounds. Like it's a crochet bin in the back, and there's collaging stuff here. I'm kind of at home, and it's just a lot of stuff that I was ready for, you know. And I think that having those doors open of connection, like, hey, you can come back here to do this, this, and this. Like, even though our program or cohort is ending, this isn't the end of our family.
One of the main reasons I came back to stay is because I was a troubled youth at the time. I was somebody that was going through a process in the justice system, and Collective Climb was right there with me through every step. They didn't turn me away and say, "Oh, I don't want you a part of my program while you're have this going on." They actually walked with me through every step. They actually gave me resources for people that I could call and people that I felt comfortable with to help me in those situations. And I also feel as though it is, I want to say a good thing, but it is something that the kids feel a little bit more comfortable too when they see it is somebody doing this work that's been through the exact same thing that they have been to. There's some of the we have also done things called Jack sessions, where it is not our diversion program, but it's partially a part of it. And during those diversion programs, I met a lot of kids that went through the exact same things that I went through. And after hearing their stories, I was able to talk to them and connect with them and actually, I won't say change their mind, but give them a reassurance that just because it's going bad now doesn't mean it's going to stay like that forever. And majority of those kids that I did have those talks with, I still have talks with today. I was just talking to one of them the other day because he posted something and I just wanted to check up on him. And we had a long conversation. Everything going good. Since he left my program, he hasn't been getting into trouble. He's been staying out the way. He's been trying to get a job. He's been trying to get financially stable. And I really feel as though having somebody that they could look to as not, I won't say a equal, but somebody that's been in their shoes before, it is always a good feeling.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to tie off. We've got several questions here about resources to be shared after the event. So as you can see, we are recording this webinar. We'll share a copy of the recording that will include the slides as well. And we'll talk to Collective Climb and the others to just include any other resources you might be interested in that post-event email we'll send out after this event takes place. Next question. I think this one's probably for you, Mckayla and Kwaku. This is Raquel Hawkins from Maryland. I think it's Department of Juvenile Services. Could you say a little bit more, just clarify your relationship with the formal justice system here? Specifically, are cases primarily pre-charge referrals coming directly from the district attorney? Or are you also receiving referrals from youth who are already under supervision? How does that look?
Yes. So, hello, shout out, you said Maryland? Yeah. So we have I don't know why I shouted that out. I'm from Virginia, not Maryland, but whatever. But just to answer the question, we do have a referral partnership with the district attorney's office here in Philadelphia. And so we do get pre-charge, pre-petition referrals, and that's protected through a memorandum of understanding that we have that basically says once the case is referred to us, information is protected. Anything that either party shares is held within Collective Climb. And once we complete our process, as designed, as you all saw in the process slide, we can send it back, and that means the case will be closed before there were any charges that came up out of this. And I will also say we don't intervene later in the process. Like we don't get involved when like probation officers or like deeper systems contact involved. There may be, and there are other programs that do so, but we are definitely trying to limit as much systems contact as possible with the intervention that we have.
Excellent, thank you. Noor, I believe this question might be for you. What measures or tools, right? How are you thinking about defining youth well-being outcomes? Is there a way to compare specifically young people who have gone through the restorative justice program with young people who do not?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So yeah, we do have a set of measures that we are already proposing at the individual, family, and community level. And so individual level, some of them are like established measures on self-efficacy, on future orientation, on mental health and well-being. And then at the family level, we're looking at family functioning and support. And then community level, youth feelings of integration and belonging within their community, as well as critical consciousness and sort of more community engagement level measures. But we are also hoping that there will be a sort of iterative participatory process where we'll get more insight from both the youth participants and other people who have been engaged in Collective Climb's programming to what are some things we might be missing, right, that are important to well-being that are happening in the program, some of which you've probably already heard about today in the panel. And so we will be revising our measures to include community member informed measures on well-being. In terms of comparison, we're comparing two groups. So currently, we're proposing to compare young people who are doing the restorative justice-based diversion program, but also adding in another group that is doing both the restorative justice-based diversion program and the transformative justice-based diversion program that with additional elements. And yes, we're open to certainly defining a third group that is not going through the restorative justice-based diversion process. Just have to think through, how to make sure it's a comparable group to these other two groups. But yeah, thank you for that question. And open to people's thoughts on additional dimensions of well-being we should be thinking about as well.
Sounds fantastic. I can see one of our collective climb members typing an answer to this question as we speak, but I'm going to see if I can get you to do it live. So this is from DSM 215. What are some other restorative justice, transformative justice initiatives going on either around the city or elsewhere that you might be excited to talk about?
Absolutely. Hi, Roz. I would first boomerang that right back to you and say Deep Space Mine 215 is an incredible organization that does land justice work, that is trying to imagine what community care and mental health support looks like outside of the traditional systems that can often be very carceral. I think y'all are an incredible example of transformative justice work happening. I'd also shout out the Dynamic Justice Collective, which is Kim Peoples and Queen Cheyenne Wade. They're doing transformative processes that are led by community members outside of the justice system. We also do some transformative justice processes when people reach out to us and ask for that kind of support. And then I also think, the Restorative Cities Initiative, which is a collective of, including us, but a collective of individual practitioners as well as restorative justice organizations, churches, mosques, and community orgs and block captains even. They do trainings so that neighbors know how to handle community conflict restoratively outside of traditional system. I'm trying to see, are there other things that?
Yeah.
Yes. Youth Art Self-Empowerment Project is another restorative justice diversion program. We're the two here in Philadelphia. They're wonderful. And we're deeply inspired by the work that they have been doing for a long time. I'd say even initiatives like Abolition School, which are like community-based opportunities to train people in political organizing, and just like building a political knowledge that people can share to transform our communities. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
This one is for Damon, Rumi, and Gaia, but of course anybody is welcome to answer it. This is from Elizabeth Lester Abdallah. Who's somebody that inspires you, whether that's an author, artist, or someone you may know?
I'll say somebody that inspires me is my dad, because he, in my eyes, he's Mr. Make It Happen, because all of the trades and everything that he knows how to do, he never went to school for it. And he is all self-taught. My dad is a self-taught mechanic. My dad is a self-taught welder. My dad is a self-taught contractor and many more things. And because of seeing him do that, it showed me it is possible for me to do basically anything I want in this world if I just put my mind to it.
I don't know if it's cliche to say this, but like y'all inspire me. Like Kwaku and Mckayla and Hungtae, like they kind of did my dream in life. And like it's very awkward to say that while y'all sitting right here. But yeah, they inspire me. I feel like to be a young creative, a young thinker in any form. Like they were just in college one day and like Kwaku was like, yo, let's talk. And like they like went to the cafeteria and had a conversation and then Collective Climb was born. And like it went through different stages, but just hearing about that, like it gives me so much hope and just so much belief that like what I want to do in this world is good enough and that like it can just come from, one conversation and to keep moving and being in different spaces, finding people to talk to because it will happen. But yeah, they inspire me.
It's kind of an art question, but I was gonna say something along my parents, but just to get a different answer, I'll say my mom. But the reason for that is because she kind of like back when I was saying like when I first joined Collective Climb, this is one example that I'm giving. Like she was kind of like pushing me really hard to like try to find something to like useful to do like frankly. And that's just one example. I just feel like she's a hard worker and she doesn't really like decide like she tries to like even if things are hard, like she'll still like try to push through them. So I try to embody that. And a lot of the stuff like I'm not because I wouldn't say like she's like the person that inspired me the most, but she helps me find the knowledge and the opportunity to find other people and find like get more knowledge in my life. So that allows me to find even more people that inspire me and more ideas that inspire me. So I guess it's not that like her specifically inspires me the most, but it's what she has allowed for me to how she's allowed for me to express myself and allowed me to like explore and become just like smarter in life is what inspires me.
If I may speak, I
Please.
think the work is the seed, and y'all are the fruit of the tree on this collective plan. Fun joke. Our original name was maybe going to be Good Tree Project, which is where the imagery comes from on our website, but it still persists in the way that we are doing this for y'all, and y'all are building this future. It's so humbling to see when we met y'all in 2022, I met you in 2024, where you were at, already brilliant minds. But I think just by being in this space and having us pour into you, y'all have grown into such powerful leaders who can articulate your own lives, your stories, and the communities that you want to build so powerfully. And I feel like that inspires me to continue doing the work because it's like, look, all I'm doing is just affirming you and saying nice things to you, honestly, and just asking y'all questions. To see y'all sitting on this panel and speaking so beautifully about this work that we've co-created really inspires me at the core.
100%.
That's what kids need though. Like they need people to pour into them. Like just saying nice things, asking you how your day is, like asking you those questions that prime your mind is something that we aren't getting in other spaces. And I think that's what makes it so much more personable. And that's why I stayed, like that's what made it feel like a family, knowing that like it wasn't just you're smart, but oh Gaia, I like how okay, period. And like it was a lot of that. So yes, thank you.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. It's going to be kind of a two-parter. Excuse me. The first one is both specific and I'm going to try to broaden it a little. So this is from Elizabeth Lester Abdallah again, from the Women's Law Project, talking about vast majority of our work is in the civil legal space, but would love to know the ways that we can support this work and the youth that you work with. So I'm going to broaden that just to say, for those who are interested, how can they get involved? How can they partner with you all? How can they support the work that you're doing? That goes for the restorative justice pieces, the community pieces, and Noor as well, the research pieces.
100%. So I think we can all jump in. I think one part of this bigger question that comes to mind for me is often when we have young people who are joining our diversion program, getting arrested is just one thing that they are going through. It's a big thing, but it's often not the only. It's often intersected with housing instability, with academic exclusion, and navigating being displaced from your school because of a conflict that happened. Sometimes we are talking about reproductive justice and we're talking about young people's needs in that space. So I do think to the degrees that we can all be collaborators in actually creating continuums of care for young people and building trusted partnerships and referral bases that means there isn't a 6-month waiting list for this young person because we know each other, because we have an established relationship. We can say, hey, we're here with them. They told us this, and now we can connect them to you. And it feels like a continuation of the circle. We're just passing the talking piece and the person and the organization is ready to receive. I think that's one thing that comes up for me. I'm not sure if there's another part.
Yeah, I think another thing is part of that question is hearing how we can support, even though the work is mostly done inside of the criminal legal system. I think it's important to have that we have partners inside of those spaces, but we also would love to partner and talk through what does that restorative implementation look like on an organizational level. So we've done trainings for organizations in the past. We've done consultations for maybe a difficult case that you're struggling with inside the bounds of the system, but maybe you might need greater community or restorative or transformative process to go along with. We also would love to partner with that. I think that's the beautiful thing when we cross-pollinate like that, even though we are in partnership with the system, but most of our work happens outside the system. There's still a lot to be learned and a lot to be gained by being in network with those on the other side, because I think that's just how we have to function when we're in this world where, yes, there are oppressive systems, but we got to make sure we're communicating and working together to mitigate that damage as much as possible. So we'd love to support processes that might need help that are coming from inside the system, but we also like to work with other organizations to see how we can communicate and trade restorative practices as well.
If I just may add on the research piece, I think in addition to, the financial and monetary support, just also the thought partnership and thinking about how to put this idea of youth's well-being and what you heard, the young people engaged with collective climb talking about this idea of just the importance of spaces and also research that highlights this pouring into young people, that they are worth being poured into, and that we are not just looking at, ways to keep them out of systems and not come into contact with the criminal legal system, but also ways that they can actually thrive and flourish in their communities. And I think that's an important notion that I would love to see, would love to have some thought partnership on, and how do we center that in the research side as well.
That's excellent. And that I think is a fantastic point to end on, right? That young people are obviously worth pouring into. That's really wonderful. That just about does it for our time today. Like I said, we're going to share the contact information around for everybody again. So if you didn't have a chance to have your question answered or get to submit a question, please do feel free to reach out to these folks after the fact. Mckayla, Kwaku, Noor, and of course, Gaia, Damon, and Rumi, thank you all for highlighting all of the critical work that you are doing in Philadelphia today. And thank you for sharing this really wonderful insight into not just the work itself, but the philosophy, right? The thoughtfulness and the intentionality that goes into the work that you do. For our audience, like I said, we'll share out that post-event email blast after the fact. We'll include a bunch of resources and ways to get in touch there as well. And of course, if you want to check out any more of Stoneleigh's past or upcoming events, you can do so at stoneleigfoundation.org/events. In particular, we have 2 additional webinars coming up in May. One is on ethical standards for defense attorneys that's being led by Phillips Black. And then there's a follow-up on restorative justice if you want to learn even more about this topic with the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, which is a nationally focused organization, and Common Justice, which is based in New York. And then finally, of course, we're going to have another wonderful spotlight from us in June with Philly Bolt. With that, thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.